Welcome back to day 8 of our December series, a month where we're daring to talk about the things people usually bury under busyness, noise, or I'm fine. And today we're touching something soft. Something most people feel, but rarely admit. Loneliness, even when you're not alone. And Elen, we've been circling around this for the past few episodes. Presence, burnout, attention, emotional clutter. It all leads here, doesn't it? It really does. And you know what's strange? Loneliness isn't always the dark, dramatic kind. Sometimes it feels like a quiet ache, a room full of people, and you still feel like your soul is sitting in the corner alone. And I think December amplifies it. The lights, the gatherings, the photos. Suddenly, everyone looks connected. And you start wondering, why don't I feel that? Exactly. And this episode is not about shaming anyone for feeling lonely. It's about saying, you're human. You're not broken. And there's a reason you feel this. So, let's go in gently. Let's talk about what loneliness really is, not the dramatic movie version, but the subtle psychological version most people actually live. So, here's something important. Loneliness is not about being physically alone. It's about being emotionally unfed. Psychologists describe loneliness as the gap between the connection you need and the connection you have. And that gap can exist in relationships, in friendships, in families, in busy social lives, even in marriages. It's not a number problem, it's a nourishment problem. Yes, because humans don't survive on presence alone. We survive on attunement, that feeling that someone is actually with you, not just around you. And the modern world gives us the opposite. We have surface interactions, distracted conversations, rapid texting, fast emotions, performative closeness. It's like fast food for the soul, filling but not feeding. I love that. Fast food closeness. You consume so much and still feel empty. A lot of people aren't lonely because they lack relationships. They're lonely because they lack emotional resonance. They have people in their life, but not people who ask real questions, listen without waiting to speak, understand their inner world, make space for their truth, sit with their silence. Loneliness is basically being unseen in plain sight. Yes, it's the silence between two people who stopped being curious about each other. You know, Elen, the more I sit with this topic, the more I realize something uncomfortable. Loneliness today isn't about being without people. It's about being without resonance. You can have a room full of voices, and none of them touch you. Exactly. It's not the absence of company, it's the absence of connection. And what's wild, Noah, is that this kind of loneliness often shows up around the people we're closest to. Family, partners, friends, the people we shouldn't feel lonely around. Right. Because the human brain is wired for something deeper than proximity. Psychologists call it felt sense. It's that inner signal that says, I am understood. I am allowed. I am emotionally safe. And ironically, most people today don't feel that, even in relationships that look good from the outside. There's something else, too. People feel lonely because they're constantly self-editing, not saying the full truth, softening their personality, shrinking their needs so they don't seem dramatic, laughing at things they don't actually find funny, pretending to be okay so they don't ruin the vibe. And when you can't bring your whole self into the room, you will always feel alone in it. God. Yes. And this is something people never talk about. Some of the loneliest people are the ones who are the most socially competent. The ones who know how to hold conversations, make everyone laugh, carry a room. But inside, they feel like a background character in their own life. Because performing connection isn't the same as receiving connection. And then there's digital loneliness, the silent epidemic. We've trained ourselves to feel visible through screens but not felt. Scrolling gives the illusion of being connected to the world. But physiologically, it increases emotional disconnection. The brain doesn't register comments and likes as real intimacy. It registers them as noise. Exactly. And somehow, the more noise there is, the more hollow the silence becomes. But can I add something a bit uncomfortable? Please. A lot of people feel lonely today because They're surrounded by people they never chose intentionally. Circumstantial relationships, coworkers, childhood friends, neighbors, extended family. Relationships created by proximity rather than alignment. And when your soul evolves, but your circle doesn't, you start feeling like a guest in your own life. Oh, absolutely. And sometimes the loneliness comes from the opposite direction. You've grown emotionally. You've done the inner work. You've learned how to communicate, reflect, apologize. But you're surrounded by people who stay on the surface. And suddenly the conversations that once felt normal feel like crumbs. There's one more piece I think people rarely understand. Sometimes you feel lonely not because others don't love you, but because you no longer love who you're being around them.
Wow.
That is the one that hits in the chest. Because loneliness isn't just a social wound. It's a self-relationship wound. When you've abandoned yourself, your inner world becomes this empty apartment you keep returning to after pretending all day. And even if people adore you, you don't feel chosen because you're not choosing you. So maybe the real loneliness is what happens when the body is in the room, but the soul is somewhere else entirely. Let's go deeper. There are specific psychological reasons this invisible loneliness grows. One big one is disconnection from self. When you lose touch with your needs, desires, feelings, you automatically feel disconnected from everyone else too. Because connection is an inside-out process. You can't share what you don't have access to. Another reason? Unmatched emotional depth. People who feel deeply, observe deeply, love deeply, often find themselves surrounded by people who don't operate at that level. Not because others are wrong, but because emotional depth is a language. And loneliness happens when you're the only one in the room speaking it. That hits. And here's another painful truth. Many people feel lonely because they've trained themselves to be low maintenance. You don't ask for anything. You don't open up. You don't want to burden others. You give and give and give. Until one day you realize you've built a life where people think you need nothing, and that feels like abandonment.
Yes.
Quiet givers often end up quietly starving. And then there's social comparison. Everyone looks connected online. Everyone looks loved, included, chosen. And suddenly your inner world feels like a secret. You know what's funny, Elen? Every time we talk about loneliness, I remember something you once told me. People aren't lonely because they're alone. They're lonely because they're not met. And honestly, I still think about that when I'm brushing my teeth. I mean, it's true. Loneliness isn't about numbers. I've felt lonelier at crowded dinners than I ever felt on a solo walk. Because you can be surrounded by people and still feel like no one is actually seeing the inside of you. Yes, that's the thing. It's like, we talk, we smile, we share little safe pieces of ourselves, the weather version of our personality. And then we go home and think, why does my chest still feel heavy? Why do I feel untouched? It's because we didn't show anything that could actually be touched.
Exactly.
We show the polished self, the one that doesn't make people uncomfortable. We say, I'm fine. I'm good. It's been busy. And all the while, the real sentence is, I'm drowning and I don't know where to put my heart. God, yes. And we've normalized it. Adults don't ask for emotional connection anymore. We ask for availability, like we're scheduling a dentist appointment. Are you free Thursday at 6 for vulnerability? Perfect, see you soon. But here's what I've noticed. People aren't cold. People aren't unwilling. They're just scared. Scared of being too much. Scared of being misunderstood. Scared of being the only one who cares deeply. And scared that if they show who they really are, the messy parts, the insecure parts, the parts that need tenderness, someone will walk away and confirm the fear they've been holding for years.
Exactly. So, what do?
We shrink. We reduce ourselves to manageable. We let relationships stay surface level because surface level doesn't risk rejection. But it also doesn't give connection. It's like ordering food and only smelling it but never eating it. You get the idea of nourishment, but not the actual thing. Leave it to you to make loneliness sound like a restaurant metaphor. Listen, it works. Connection is food. Loneliness is hunger. You know when I felt the loneliest? It wasn't after a breakup. It wasn't during a hard year. It was when everything from the outside looked perfectly fine: career, relationships, routines. But inside, I felt like no one actually knew my inner world, like I was hosting my own life, not living it. I feel that so deeply. And I think a lot of people listening are there right now. In that weird, invisible loneliness where nothing is wrong but something is missing.
Yes.
And you know what makes it worse? We think loneliness is something to be ashamed of, like it means we failed at connection. But sometimes loneliness is actually a sign that we've outgrown our emotional environment, that we need depth, honesty, presence, and the life we built wasn't designed for that yet. Wow. Say that again, but slower, because someone's soul just sat up in their chair. Loneliness isn't always a wound. Sometimes it's a signal, a whisper. You're ready for more than the life you're currently living. Yes. And when you see loneliness that way, it becomes less of a shame and more of a compass. Exactly. Loneliness might hurt, but it also points. It tells you where connection is missing, where presence is absent, where your truth is hiding. And that's why this conversation matters. Because people think loneliness is a dead end. But actually, sometimes it's an invitation, a doorway, a beginning, a moment where you finally say, I want more, and I deserve more. And you do. Everyone listening does. You know, maybe loneliness isn't proof that something's wrong with us. Maybe it's proof that we haven't given up on ourselves yet. That is beautiful and honest. And the truest thing we've said today. You know, Elen, the more we talk about loneliness, the more I realize something simple but brutal. Most of us think connection starts with others, but the truth is, connection begins with how safe you feel inside your own mind.
Exactly.
People keep trying to fix loneliness by seeking someone, anyone, to fill the silence. But if the silence inside you feels threatening, no amount of company will feel comforting. It's like trying to build a home on soil you haven't touched in years. You don't know where the cracks are. And that's the first step, right? Coming home to yourself. Not in a poetic way, in a very practical, almost clinical way. Sitting with your own thoughts long enough to recognize, this is what I want. This is what I fear. This is where I feel small. This is where I feel powerful.
Yes.
And to add to that, there's a psychological reason this works. The brain relaxes when it encounters consistency. When you become predictable to yourself, meaning you know your own boundaries, your own needs, your own emotional signals, your nervous system stops treating life like a battlefield. From that calm place, connection becomes possible again. Because connection needs softness, and you can't be soft when you're in survival mode.
God, yes.
You know what I tell people sometimes? Your relationships don't need you to be impressive. They need you to be available. But emotional availability can't exist when you're exhausted from pretending. So step 1. Reconnect with yourself through honesty. Not dramatic honesty, quiet honesty. The kind where you ask, what am I actually feeling? What am I avoiding? What do I secretly need right now? And step 2, and this one people underestimate, you need to share small truths with safe people. Not your whole life story. Not internal explosions or trauma dumps. Just small truths. Hey, I'm tired. I feel a little off today. I could use someone's company. It's the emotional equivalent of opening a window a few centimeters just to let fresh air in. Yes, because connection is built through micro moments, not grand gestures.
Exactly.
Psychology calls it emotional bids, those tiny signals you send out hoping someone will respond. A joke, a smile, a look at this, a small confession. Connection grows when someone notices your bids and turns toward them. Which leads to another important part. Choosing people who don't make you perform to be loved.
God.
If people listening today take only one thing, let it be this: your real connections will never require you to be on. If someone only loves the version of you that entertains, solves, listens, carries, lifts, that's not love, that's consumption. Connection is mutual nourishment, not a performance. Exactly. And the beautiful thing? When you stop overfunctioning, the wrong people drift away, and the right ones start to feel magnetic. So let's summarize the steps in the most human way possible. 1. Rebuild safety inside yourself by pausing, noticing, and naming what's happening in you. 2. Practice small honesty. Not confessions, not oversharing, just truth in microdoses. 3. Reach out through small emotional bids. Send signals, invite closeness, let people in slowly. 4. Choose connection that lets you breathe. If you have to earn love, it's not love. 5. Allow yourself to be seen gradually. Vulnerability isn't ripping your chest open, it's opening your hand. And let me add one more. Reconnection doesn't need dramatic effort. It just needs consistency. A text you send when you usually stay silent. A 5-minute call. A walk with someone. Looking someone in the eyes when you say, I missed you. These small acts, they create emotional oxygen. You know what this reminds me of?
What?
Connection is like warmth. You don't need a fire, sometimes all you need is a steady candle.
Yes.
And the truth is, most people aren't asking for fireworks. They're asking for presence. Someone to sit with them, not fix them, not judge them, just sit. If people listening take that in, loneliness will already start to loosen its grip, because loneliness doesn't disappear when someone enters your life. It disappears when you stop abandoning yourself. I feel like this conversation settled somewhere deep. Loneliness is such a human thing, but the shame around it makes us all whisper instead of reaching out.
Yeah.
And the truth is, there's nothing weak about wanting to feel connected. There's nothing dramatic about craving presence. It just means you're human in a world that keeps trying to turn us into machines. If you're listening right now and you feel that invisible ache, that quiet, I wish someone understood me, take this as your reminder. You're not strange. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're just longing. And longing is proof that your heart is still open. And December, it has this way of magnifying everything. The lights, the memories, the expectations, it all gets louder. So if you feel a little tender this month, be soft with yourself. Sometimes the most meaningful connection you can make is simply telling someone, hey, I'm here. And I miss being close. Tonight, maybe reconnect with yourself first. Sit in a quiet corner, breathe, check in, ask, what do I need to feel less alone right now? Sometimes the answer is rest. Sometimes it's reaching out. Sometimes it's letting yourself be seen, gently, slowly. And remember, you don't need a crowd to feel connected. You just need realness. One honest moment. One honest person. Start small. Start soft. Your heart will find its way back. Thank you for spending this December moment with us. We hope you leave this episode feeling a little lighter, a little warmer, and a little less alone. We'll meet you again tomorrow, same calm space, same honesty. Until then, take care, breathe gently, and let yourself be held, even if it's just by your own kindness tonight.